Yeah, so I welcome you to the online class being offered by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. I'm your counselor, SM Fasiullah. We'll be discussing about Course 7, that is aspects of language and their relation to literature. In the previous classes, we talked about relationship between language and literature and what constitute literature and what role does language play in the production of literature. And in that particular area, we are exploring more about different genres of literature and what are the different aspects of language that are responsible for constituting or producing literature. And if you recall, we talked about a variety of things like the different distinction between a normal language and a scientific language or literary language. Okay, and then quite a few things about figures of speech. One of the important aspect that is responsible for making language of literature different from an ordinary language or a normal language, right? And within that, we talked about irony, ambiguity, and things like that. And different types of irony as well, which is discussed by Clement Brooks, right? And different types of ambiguity discussed by William Emerson. Today, we will be talking about functions of literature. I hope I'm audible and you are able to see the screen that I'm sharing with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, so when it comes to functions of literature, a variety of people from different civilizations, different geographical locations, have thought about and talked about it. In Western knowledge tradition, we go back to usually the Greeks, right? And among the Greeks, we discuss about Plato and Aristotle as one of the foremost philosophers who discussed about variety of aspects of human life and different things that humans do, including literature, right? Which is usually called poetics at that time, okay, and we call it literature in modern language. So literature, when it comes to poetics, and you all know that the dominant genre at that time was drama. And when we talk about all these things, we know that mostly literature was oral in nature. Okay. A very few things were written down and preserved, but literature had been in the history of humanity as an oral phenomena, as the language itself is a spoken phenomena or an oral phenomena, so does the literature. It is only late that much late into human history that writing is developed, and again, even though writing as a practice is developed among human beings, right, to preserve the ideas, to preserve histories of people, places, and important things, right? Or we know that still in the world we have languages, so many languages, right? Which do not have their own script, right? And those script, because those languages do not have scripts, they tend to die down, and it's very difficult to preserve those languages. But those languages which have scripts, they are very few among human languages. As I told earlier, that the survey that is done by International Phonetic Association and variety of other institutions have found out that there are as many as 5,000 different languages that humans speak. Okay, out of those 5,000 languages, there are very few which have scripts, right? And there are even less number of languages which exist for more than 1,000 years. Okay, and such languages are called classical languages. When it comes to India, in our discussion on Indian literature, we we came to know about this fact that India has 1,000+ languages, right? Including variety of dialects, spoken languages, written languages, and all. And but within those 1,000+ languages, we have only six as classical languages, right? Telugu and Tamil being two among those six classical languages. So, which means these languages have existed for a much longer time, right? And they have a lot of literature in that, and that language is not only spoken but also preserved in the form of written literature. Okay, and now if we get a chance, we'll talk about what Indians have thought about the function of literature, right? One important thing we talked about in Indian literary tradition, that when it comes to the function of, or the goal or purpose of performative art, right? It was to not only entertain but also transport the listener or the viewer into an alternate reality, right? And experience a variety of emotions, right? That is what we discussed when we were talking about Indian literary traditions, right? Especially Natya Shastra and other theories. Similarly, in Western tradition, we know that Plato is among the foremost persons whose actually philosophical treatise are preserved, right? And he happens to talk about literature, right? And as I told you, the dominant form of literature at that time was poetry or drama. Okay, so he says that a philosopher is superior to a poet, right? We make this distinction. We make this clear distinction between a philosopher and a poet, right? He says that a poet is less compared to a philosopher in terms of his relevance in the society, in terms of his his stature in the society, in terms of the contribution that a poet makes to the society, right? A philosopher more or less is like a guide, right? The torch bearer for the society. It is a philosopher who thinks about complex things, complex things in the society. A philosopher thinks about a variety of societal problems and come up with solutions to those things. A similar role is not played by a poet. A poet is basically traditionally is thought to be an entertainer, right? The one who makes you laugh, the one who makes you think about something, right? The one who gives you an experience which you might not have had earlier, and he might give you experience of a thing in a slightly different way, even though you are familiar with that particular situation, but you experience it in a fresh way. On the other hand, a philosopher is a very is like a scientist, right? He is very serious. He is very objective, right? He is least interested in emotions, right? Other things, right? He may be thinking about why we exist. He may be thinking about what would happen if global warming becomes a reality. Things like that. Same thing may not be a serious concern for a poet. So that is why Plato, in that particular spirit, right, in that particular sense, Plato is trying to say that a poet is not as great or as better as philosopher. A philosopher is always superior to a poet. And one another major point why he thinks that poet is not superior when it comes to society in the society is because a poet is an imitator. What does it mean? It means when you write poetry, when you produce literature, right? What you basically do is imitate. Right? You write a story, and that story has a relevance to reality, which means you are taking inspiration from existing reality, right, or past reality, or possible future reality, and that human beings or as few people among human beings have gone through, and then taking inspiration from that, you write something in the form of a poem, in the form of a drama, in the form of a short story, in the form of a novel, or any other form. So that is why what basically a poet is doing, right, is actually imitating, right? And poet, Plato says that a person as a man of literature, right? The producer of literature, right? As a novelist, as a poet, as a dramatist, is far removed from the truth. He has certain worldview where he says that uh, he says that there are different realm. This is the realm of the god. Sorry, is the sorry, excuse me. This is the realm of the god. If we consider as different levels or different realities, then this is called the realm of the god or the divine, right? We call it heaven. We call it what every religion and tradition have different terminologies, but by and large, this entire realm, this entire prapancham is where ultimate truth exists. The God is the ultimate truth. There's nothing as an ultimate truth that exists except God and his divine realm. Okay. Now, whatever comes to us, right, in the form of sacred text or in the form of angels, in the form of divine intervention, right? All these things in the world, our world, that is a material world, right? It is a copy of this ultimate truth. So this is the truth in original form, and this is the second copy of that. And when a writer, right, writes something taking inspiration from this world, then this is another copy of it, right? So what Plato is trying to tell us is that when you produce literature, you are far removed, right, or thrice removed from the truth or the reality. And this is another point. And one another important thing he talks about is that poetry feeds and waters passion, which means literature. Here poetry means literature. A poet means literature. Okay, so a writer, right? As a poet, as a what we say, fiction writer or a novel writer, as a dramatist, what he or she does fuels the emotions, right? When you read something, you feel it, right? Your passions are charged by watching, say, one movie, right, which is basically an advanced form of drama, a modern form of a drama, right? Watching a Shah Rukh Khan uh, falling in love with a heroine in a movie makes or gives or incites the passion, right? The fuels the passion among the viewer that he should also go and try to make his own love story. So that is why Plato says, poets are inferior, because instead of giving a push to thought, right? Instead of igniting the thought, right? Instead of making a person think critically about issues in his life and people around him and humanity in general, the world in general, what a poet is doing is playing with the passion, playing with the feelings, stoking the feelings, and that is why he is inferior to a philosopher. And fifth important point that Plato talks about is passion must be controlled to keep the society good. He says that passion makes one go astray, which means if your passions are charged, your rational ability, your ability to think about consequences of situations, of actions, becomes low, fades away. Those things, that ability goes down, right? And that is why you say that when your passions are too high, right, whether in love or in war, you want to go to any extent to win either the heart of the person or the war. So that is why there is a saying, everything is fair in love and war. Both love and war are highly passionate adventures, highly passionate endeavors, where you most likely suppress your rational thinking. You forget about the consequences. You start looking at only one aspect of the issue or the problem. You don't want to think about consequences. You don't want to think rationally. And but Plato, as a philosopher or as a guide of humanity, he says, passion must be controlled. Otherwise, society will completely go crazy. Because society is made up of individuals. If individuals go crazy, if individuals lose the right track, right, what would happen? Collectively, society is gone. Do you agree with that? I hope you agree.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So these are the 5 different points, Plato talks about, in his, treatise, in his, what do you say, explanation on the role of, literature, function of literature in society. And that is why he says poets must be banned. He says, because they are stoking emotions, because they are, what we say, telling things which are far removed from reality, right? Because they are just imitators, right? And because they are inferior to, philosophers, poets must be banned from the society, which means the people who produce literature must not be allowed to produce literature. Because by producing literature, they are pushing people in the wrong direction, right? It is equivalent to spoiling the society. It is equivalent to misguiding the society. So a poet is not a true philosopher. A poet is basically misleading the society. So that is why before the society is misled, let's banish poets. Let them not produce literature. Okay, that is what Plato says. And this as a topic, as a question has come time and again in the examinations. Why Plato wanted poets to be banished or writers to be banished. So you can talk about these 5 different points. to justify why Plato wanted to actually banish. And all these things appear in his work, that is Republic. Republic is the work that is produced by Plato. You make mention of that. Okay. Now, after Plato, his disciple, right, his Shishya, right, comes. Aristotle comes as his disciple. He learned from his guru that poets have an insignificant role in the society. They are not as great as philosophers. In fact, they are misleaders in the society. They mislead people. They invoke. They foment their the passions of the readers, right, or the viewers, and they say things which are far removed from what actual reality is. So that is why they should be outcast. They should be banished. He understands what his teacher says, but then he thinks critically because he is also a philosopher, like his teacher. Then he says, "Sir, hold on. What you say about poets being imitator, I agree. Right? What you say that poets are inferior to philosophers, I agree. But the point that where you say poets actually fuel passions, right, is something I differ with. In fact, by producing literature, a poet is acting as a what? Healer. In what way? He says the poet or a dramatist or a producer of literature, by giving a scenario, by giving a situation in the form of a poetry, in the form of a novel or a story or drama, right? He is trying for catharsis. What is it? It is nothing but purgation or cleansing of emotions, which means, I'll give you one modern example. Right? You have seen a movie of a lot of Telugu movies, right? Do you watch movies?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
it's like an emotional scene where we start crying. That's the catharsis.
Yeah. So yeah. So when you watch a movie, right, like Businessman, right, or any such movie, you see that one individual is up against the entire system, which is corrupt, which is a rogue, which has gone crazy, which doesn't value honesty. Dishonesty, deceit, bribe, corruption is the norm of that administration. Then that one individual stands up, faces the administration, punishes the administration. Now, watching that particular movie, does that give you satisfaction? Some kind of relief? మంచిగా చేశాడు. మా గల్లీలో ఉన్న ఒక లైట్లీ రిపేర్ చేయమని నెల నుంచి చెప్తున్నాం, చేయలేదు. That grudge, that pain, right? That dissatisfaction, whether related to that light or whether to anything that is concerned with the administration, which the administration is supposed to give you as a service, as a citizen, because as a citizen taxpayer, but they are not doing it. dereliction of duty is giving you pain, is giving you dissatisfaction and happiness, is bothering you. But you cannot vent out your emotions. What happens? Does that emotion neutralize? No. Does that emotion needs to be neutralized? Yes. Watching a hero in a cinematic world, in an imaginary world, in a literary world, punishing the administration for its dereliction of duty, for its lack of service, for its corruption, does that relieve you of some heaviness in the heart and mind? Yes, it does. And that is what catharsis is. So Aristotle says, sir, indeed, a poet is actually creating passion, is playing with the emotions, but for a right purpose. But for a right purpose. In doing so, he is actually cleansing the emotions of the viewers and the readers. Now, can we call a poet a healer? Yes, we can. Because he is healing us of our emotional imbalance. Right? We are supposed to be in a normalized state. But because of life, because of circumstances in life, either our good passions or bad passions are stopped. And it is not neutralized. That builds up over a period of time. And if that builds up, I think if you allow me, I'll talk a point or two about these things. As because we are human beings after all, and Aristotle has talk about a very important human tendency. If a particular emotion is building up over a period of time, if it happens, then it would eventually burst. Have you seen people bursting in anger or in happiness? Yes, you and I might have in our life multiple times express our strong emotions of anger or of happiness. Why it is so? A normal people would not do that. A people in a normalized state of emotions would not do that. Smaller incidents build up into a stronger one. If somebody is busting at you out of displeasure and anger, you have to immediately talk to that person. Not at that time, not in that moment. In that moment, we have to keep as much calm as possible and respond in as sweet tone and with as polite words as possible. And then when that person is done with busting out, when he calms down, please offer a cup of tea or a plate of biryani. Sit with him, talk to him, and understand why he is so upset at you. It is not of not because of one incident. People won't burst because of one single incident. People burst in anger or in happiness because of smaller things building up. When things pile up, then only that burst happens. Which means the person who bursted at you is the person who is concerned about you, or is the person who regularly interacts with you or transacts with you. And in those transactions, in those regular activities, things have gradually piled up. And especially when we have children around us, I think we need to also pay even more attention. We have to be even more sensitive. We usually say, children are showing tantrums. Children do show tantrums, but when they are displaying a lot of anger, it means there is a deficiency of compassion around him. He is lacking compassion from the people who are around him. It could be his mother, it could be his father, it could be his uncle, it could be his siblings. Human beings survive and remain happy because of the compassion of people around them. If they stop giving compassion, their lack of sensitivity towards people or person around them makes that person a social evil and a person who is averse to the society, averse to the human beings. So thanks to Aristotle, he said that if you long for somebody for a longer time, then when you meet that person, you burst into happiness, you hug, you dance in joy, because you have been longing for that person for a long time, over a period of time. The emotions to meet him, to talk to him, right, to hug him, gradually built up. And when that moment came, when the meeting became possible, what you see is the burst of positive energy and emotions, and two people hugging and dancing. So thanks to Aristotle, we have understood about human emotions and the need to perform a catharsis like a poet and like a healer. You and I, as elders, or as people who have been blessed with wisdom and understanding through literature, through this concept of catharsis, we need to make sure that if any of our children, any of our siblings, or any of people who are related to us, who talk to us, who do transactions with us in every day-to-day life, are people who spends a portion of their lifetime or everyday time with us, are the peoples about whom we must be concerned. If they are not happy with us, we have to take one positive step of offering them a cup of tea, sitting with them over a plate of biryani, and trying to cleanse their emotions, cleanse their negative built up against you. Will you be able to do that? Are you not a man of literature or a woman of literature? Do you want to act like a healer? The answer should be affirmative. I hope with this understanding of catharsis and Aristotle, you and I would play a much more positive role in our own lives and in the human society we are living in, right? By performing catharsis. I'm reminded of one very important message Shah Rukh Khan has given when he came to Maulana Azad National Urdu University in its, I think 7th convocation, if I remember it correctly. And I happened to attend that convocation. In that convocation, he said, I am a human being and I do also, have to face, failures like anybody else. But whenever I see that, my movie hasn't performed, right, or some of my business hasn't performed, I go into the bathroom, I close the door, and I weep like a child. And I weep until my whole being becomes relaxed. And then I wash my face and I come out. What did Shah Rukh Khan do in the bathroom? Can you please tell me?
Healed himself, sir.
Healed himself. He performed catharsis on himself. He purged or he cleaned his own emotions. So we also need healing, and people around us also need healing. Let's become true men of letters, women of letters, and healers. Let's start healing ourselves and people around us with the magic that we came to realize today from Aristotle. Right? So Aristotle principally disagreed with Plato on the role of poetics, right? Because the dominant genre of that time was drama. So in that context, he gave this concept of catharsis, but it applies to the entire poetry, right? So now, in fact, his work itself is called Poetics. So he's talking about entire literature. And he says that tragedy acts like a medicine to cure souls of diseases. Right? Instead of tragedy, you just read it as literature. Literature acts like a medicine to cure soul of diseases, as I explained to you through real-time examples. How literature could act as a healer. A poet can act as, or the writer can act as a healer. So wherever you have an opportunity, wherever you see that children, our siblings, or people around us are not happy with us, that's possible because we may take a decision which would disappoint somebody, or make somebody disagree, or make somebody develop negative emotions or passions against us. That is quite possible. That is perfectly human things. But if that is developing or piling up, then you have to take notice of it and do something to cleanse it. And one best example we can learn from Prophet Muhammad, he said, it is always good to give gifts and take gifts. That particular goodness could start with as small as a Cadbury chocolate. Just give a chocolate to the children who doesn't like to be in your company, who hates to be around you. It's not his thought, it's his passion, it's emotions. He has developed some negative emotions about you as a being, and he doesn't like being in your company, which means that is the right time to offer a chocolate to that kid, maybe once or multiple times until he becomes your friend, or at least he stops avoiding you. Right? And that particular strategy works even with adults. If there is one colleague of you, one relative of you, one sibling of you who doesn't prefer to be in your company because of your strong personality, because of your usage of language, because of some other thing, perhaps, or maybe some decision in the past that you have taken which made them your adversary. So then it's time to extend Cadbury as a gift. It's a good strategy, given by Prophet Muhammad. So peace be upon him. So what I'm saying is, after all, whether we are reading literature, whether we are doing some job, in any aspect, we still remain human beings. And we can be happy only when people are around us. Nobody can be happy being alone. We are social beings. We need company of people to talk to celebrate, and to relieve our, what we say, pains. So let's make use of this concept of catharsis and cleanse our own emotions and as well as emotions of people around us. Did you enjoy this lecture?
Yes, sir.
Yes, very
Did
much.
you learn anything worthwhile in through this lecture?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I urge every one of you to study or go through once again about what Plato said and what Aristotle responded to that as two important topics from examination point of view. If you open up your SLM, that is self-learning material provided by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, you'll find these topics clearly discussed in the SLM. So if you have missed any point or any important thing from these, you can just refer to that SLM. And last thing about this function of literature, we have Milton, who belongs to England, or who is actually British, right? And he is a man of also literature. What he says that the principle of catharsis, that the catharsis, the concept of catharsis that is discussed by Aristotle, regarding that he comments and he says that the principle of catharsis is that of the principle of homeopathy. In homeopathy, the kind of cure, they say, like cures like cure likes, right? Like cure, I think it's not readable. I'll write it. Like cure. Sorry, this is likes. Okay. So this is the principle on which entire homeopathy as a method of medicine or a way of medicine is developed. Which means for example, if you have common cold, right? What do you take? You have multiple products, right? You can go for Vicks or Zendubam or Zinda or things like that, right? All those products have certain common what we say, compounds, right? Which
it actually depends upon the severity of the common cold. If it is very severe, then we would go for even antibiotics.
Yeah, that's a different case. I'm talking about just common cold. I'm not talking about allergies. I'm not talking about what we say, sinusitis and all those things. Just common cold. So what do? You take these kind of over the counter available medicines available over the counter, like Zandubam, these which are available in every home, and Zinda. Those medicines have one particular compound which actually is responsible for cold, whose nature is actually cold, right? Pudine ka phool, right? There is one compound, one particular chemical element that is pudine ka phool. That is basically cold in nature. So by inhaling colder thing, you are curing cold, right? So in the same way, catharsis works. If there is bad emotions, so you talk about that bad emotions and cleanse it. And I gave you example of that one movie, right, where a person fights with the administration. Okay, so this is what John Milton says, the one who wrote Paradise Lost, right? John Milton is the author of Paradise Lost.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I think with this, we will wind up today's class. And if you have any questions related to what Plato said and what Aristotle said, and or the points that we discussed during the conversation, during the interaction, you can ask, or else we'll close the class and meet tomorrow in the next class. Do you have any questions? I think there are no more questions, and it's right time to say goodbye.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
See you in the next class.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.